Well, there were hints and suggestions that today would be the Red Bull show, and it might well have proved to be so, were it not for one Fernando Alonso. The Aston Martin resurgence is real, and it is very much something to be excited about. It's been a fantastic opening Grand Prix for the 2023 Formula One season, and we're going to review everything here on F1 Live, your post-race show. Hello, folks, and welcome to the Bahrain International Circuit paddock at the end of a magnificent Grand Prix, which has seen Max Verstappen take his 36th Formula One victory. He did so in a 1-2 for Red Bull Racing. And in third place, Fernando Alonso with an impeccable drive, rolling back the years, his first since 2021. My co-host, Felipe Drogovic. Hello, chap. He's a bit late because he's been celebrating.
Yeah, I've been celebrating, I've been running, so...
My word.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the vibe like down at Aston Martin right now?
It's crazy. It's unbelievable. Everyone is so pumped about it. And yeah, finally, we know, like, we knew we could do a good job now, but, you know, just to confirm this in this race is just amazing.
And a lot of thanks has to go to you. A whole day's worth
Hopefully.
of running in the car, all the work that you do. You know what it's like to drive this car. Fernando said at the end, you know, to the team, thank you for giving me such an amazing car to drive. How good is that car to drive?
Yeah, it's really, really, really good. I think main thing everyone can see is so stable. The car has been so stable throughout the whole weekend and this track. Every time we went on track, car is very stable, very easy to work on, and a lot easier to drive than last year's car. So yeah, a pleasure to drive.
Was there any fear at the team that this podium, that so much of this paddock had expected to come your way, might not come your way today? When the Mercedes got ahead at the start, both Ferraris managed to stay ahead at the start, and I guess that opening lap where it got very, very close between Lance and Fernando.
Yeah, too close. But I think coming from the testing, everything changed a little bit. So there was a little bit of fear, I would say, but everyone was just, you know, just waiting for the race to see what's going to happen. And yeah, this is actually a good surprise. I think maybe most of the people expected good, but not as good as this. So yeah, everyone is really happy about it.
Talk to me about the degradation, because we were talking all the way through the weekend about the fact that Aston Martin's race pace looked great because the degradation didn't look very high, and that's been a trait of this car all the way through last year as well. The fact that Fernando could hold on to his tyres, that he could push. How early on in the test were you aware of how kind this car would be?
I guess on the first full race simulation we did, I think it was with me. I already felt the car was pretty consistent. I remember going out from the pits and there was, I think, a Mercedes in front, and he was deeper down in the stint, so lighter car, and still we could keep up with them. So there we knew it wasn't too bad racing, so yeah, we could show up today. I think that's also due to, you know, the whole car being so stable, and I think the car has been more loaded with downforce compared to other cars.
The traction looks ridiculous, and this was in evidence with all of Fernando's battles today. We're going to roll back to the one that he had first of all with Lewis Hamilton, because the move that he put on the 7-time world champion was brilliant. We'll go through it here. I mean, he moves to the inside, looks to have it done, then just that little twitch as he applies the throttle.
Yeah, he realized Hamilton tried to switch back, and I think he tried just to cover him off, but it was too late, and he tried again and managed to do a mega move on him now.
And look at that, going for the outside, nips it up the inside. You don't get many overtakes on the inside of turn 10. That was something very, very special.
Very, very special. Yeah, I was actually, yeah, also, this one was also really cool. He tried to do the same on Sainz, but he saw Carlos covered up the inside there, so he just took the traction away out of turn 10.
And then getting that traction, getting the DRS, making the move up there into turn 11. And again, 11's not a place we see too. I mean, in F2, F3, we see it from time to time. In F1, not so much at 11. You really need that run down that straight. And again, just showing the legs on the car.
Yeah. The car was a bit slow on the straights compared to the others. So I think that's also why Fernando could keep up with them in Sector 2 and be close into turn 10 and turn 11. So yeah, that was a good trade-off, I would say.
Great to see the two Spaniards fighting each other. Of course, Carlos grew up idolizing Fernando. Wonderful to see those two. Great to see the respect between them. Wonderful to see the racecraft of Fernando Alonso. As you were growing up as a young racing driver, was Fernando somebody that you looked up to?
Yeah. I think, when I started looking into motorsports was around 2006, 2005. So it was probably the best years of his life. So, or maybe this could be his best year, maybe. But until then he was on top of it. So I just grew up watching him. It was really cool to see him now.
Feels weird, doesn't it? 17 years since he had a world championship.
Yeah, his debut year was 1 year later than I born. So yeah, 2001. I was born in 2000. So.
Let's talk very quickly about that little moment between Lance and Fernando.
Yeah.
At the team, were there hearts in mouths? Was it a bit of a...
I think everyone was really nervous, but I think Lance, he committed to the inside to brake really late and deep, and he thought Fernando was going around the outside, but then Fernando tried to switch back, so it was caught up.
And after that, we've got to say a brilliant race for Lance Stroll. Pulled it home in 6th place. A brilliant drive through all of the pain that he must have been going through with his wrists. A great drive. Fernando even commented over the radio as well. A brilliant drive from Lance Stroll. Even the guys on commentary were super impressed with the way he drove today. Yeah,
it was super impressive. I think on Friday he was struggling a little bit, but then after that he managed to improve and managed to do a great job now.
Brilliant stuff. So welcome to the show, Alex Albon. Points in the first race. Could you have expected that you were going to finish in the top 10 after everything that's happened this weekend?
It definitely wasn't on the performance strategy analysis prediction page coming into this weekend. We looked like we were the 10th quickest team, and it surprised ourselves. Even yesterday, I would argue we qualified out of position today. We were starting 15th, but we should have been within the top 10.
Yeah.
And our race pace, we knew it was going to take a bit of a beating, but we were racing Alpines, we were racing AlphaTauris, we were racing the Alphas. It was really good out there. I really enjoyed it.
You can see the smile on your face. How alive did the car come this afternoon? How much do you feel you could push it? Was the
Not a lot.
Was the deg okay? Like, could you?
Oh, it was tricky out there. So you can feel the wind. The wind right now is very low. It was low yesterday. It does help us a little bit when the variables of wind protect us going through some corners. But it made it really tricky. It's so light, but the switch was almost 180 degrees today, and it made everything feel so awkward and disconnected. It wasn't easy to drive. There was a lot of management involved. We were fighting cars constantly with the way the tires are and the way that you need to work them. You don't necessarily want to be fighting all the time. It adds so much temperature. It feels a little bit like you're driving more like an F2 car. That kind of management, you would know, that kind of excessive management to make sure everything lasts. And at the same time, you've got these Alpines coming right behind you. You've got Yuki catching me. It was interesting.
Brilliant stuff, man. We'll let you get on because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that want to talk to you, Alex.
Yes,
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Brilliant drive from Alex Albon today. Williams had a serious turn of pace, and as he said, that they weren't even expecting.
Yeah, I think since practice, I was watching with Stoffel Van Dorn a little bit, and we could see the car was balanced, but yeah, maybe not enough grip in quali, but now in the races they look really strong.
Welcome back to the post-race show, this time as a fully fledged Formula One driver.
Dressed up today.
Dressed up for the occasion.
Yeah.
A tough day out there for you, but how much did you learn? How much importance can you place on this race for everything that you've gone through, and the data you'll have, the knowledge that you'll have about what this car now does through an entire weekend?
I think it was an encouraging race. We obviously started in the back, so it was not easy to come through, but what was good to kind of experience that we were up there to fight in the midfield, and I think we got to take that with us for the upcoming races. And yeah, ultimately it was a decent comeback. Obviously there were some retirements, but nevertheless the pace looked decent in the midfield.
When you saw everyone around you on the softs and you're sitting there on the old hards, did you just think, it's going to be a long finish to the race?
Yeah, well, honestly, I feel good. Like in Monza, I felt like I ran a marathon, and I think I'm ready for another gym session tomorrow. But I will admit the end was long.
Yeah, I was doing the post-race show in Monza, and I can see you're a lot different now, a lot better.
You couldn't.
I
move,
recall actually. Yeah.
You couldn't move your arms in
Yeah.
Monza. How much has the team learnt this weekend? Obviously, Yuki getting so close to the points as well, and as you say, a lot of positives that you've drawn out of the race.
I think for everyone it's been a very good learning weekend, but we'll probably need a few more weekends to get a better understanding where we are relatively to competition. It's clear that the midfield is very close, and we hope that Saudi will suit us a little bit better.
Lovely stuff. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you, buddy. Thank you so much. Great to hear from Nyck de Vries. Alpha Tauri looked like they were going to struggle at the start of this season. After testing, they ran so many laps, but the pace didn't look like it was there. But another Williams in terms of the pace they've been able to draw out of it, particularly in race conditions. Yuki Tsunoda very, very nearly getting in the points.
Yeah, it is. I think Tsunoda did a good job yesterday, you know, just extracting everything from the car. And I think they've got a little bit of work to do, but no, they did a step forward from testing, so it's good to see him.
And when we were talking about Williams, we should also, of course, mention the brilliant job that Logan Sargent did today as a rookie. Fared really, really well. Was unlucky not to get through to Q2 yesterday, actually, but finished, I shouldn't need to check that, but 12th today. And personally, really impressed with how he drove. You know him, you've raced against him. How impressed were you with Logan?
Yeah, I think I was impressed by both Williams too.
Yeah.
When I saw them, you know, fighting for points, I was quite impressive. So it's good to see them there, and also I've raced Logan, so I know he's really quick, and for sure he's just going to get better throughout the season.
Absolutely. Right, shall we have a little look at how Aston Martin managed to find themselves fighting for a podium? Because you guys did have the pace. That pace was undeniable in clean air towards the end of the race. You know, Fernando was showing that that was the second quickest car out on track, but he had work to do, because at the start the Mercedes got ahead, the Ferraris had already started ahead, and those Ferraris were pretty locked into the third and fourth places until Charles Leclerc had his engine failure. For a team like Ferrari, the deg on the tyres is what ultimately affected Carlos at the end as well. When the tyres start to drop off, what's that like as a driver, knowing that there's nothing you can do now to try and pull that back?
It's a nightmare, basically. It's nothing nice. I think we just try to survive. Obviously, the good communication between the team always helps, you know, to see how we can fight, or maybe we don't need to fight just to not destroy the tires. But didn't seem like they had a great pace today, also especially degradation. Pace I think was fine, but they had a lot of that.
Charles Leclerc was looking at a podium today. Ultimately, it ended in what we suspect was an engine failure. But let's let the man himself explain how his afternoon ended the way it did.
Hey, Charles, can you just sum up the emotions? Because it looked like you had a car to fight for a podium today, and then obviously frustrations with the engine and the reliability that the team have worked so hard for over the winter.
Yeah, we definitely had the car to fight for the podium. I mean, honestly, I think the podium was there. We had a good gap behind. I was managing the pace. Everything felt good, so it is a shame. But yeah, now I just hope we can look into it, understand what went wrong, and yeah, don't have this problem anymore.
I know in these moments it's difficult to look at the positives, but there were positives to take from today, weren't there?
I mean, the first stint, the choice that we have made was the right one in qualifying yesterday. Apart from that, not much.
Thank you.
A very dejected Charles Leclerc there. Nothing you can do, obviously, about an engine failure. How worried will Ferrari be, do you think, right now, not just about the pace of Red Bull, but about the pace of Aston Martin?
Yeah, they're going to be very worried, I guess so. And also going into Saudi, the conditions are going to be very similar. You know, we are not far away from Saudi, I would say. And yeah, I think they need to figure out something that just to be more reliable. And also, hopefully, the Astons are going to put on a show also in Saudi. So I'm going to be cheering also, especially for the green one. So yeah.
Lovely stuff. Right, one Ferrari driver did reach the checkered flag, and that was Carlos Sainz.
Hey, Carlos missed out on the podium right at the end there. How frustrating is it to see that you just didn't really have the pace to fight?
Yeah, not too much. I was actually surprised how long probably we were lasting in that position, because knowing from the test we knew that the Red Bulls and the Aston Martins just have a lot better deck, a lot better race pace than us, and in the end we had to settle for P4, which, to be honest, there's not a lot more than what we could have done today. We just it's a bit of a reality check. It's where we are. We just use the tires too much. As soon as I push to defend a bit from Fernando, I cook the tires, and you need to start looking also to Lewis, no? And we managed to hold Lewis off, but it gives us very little margin to play with the race.
How much work is there to do, especially with the reliability issues that Charles suffered as well?
Not ideal, the reliability, but more than that, it worries me the gap to Red Bull and the race pace of Aston, which at the moment is faster. I don't believe it will be like that in every race, but it shows that in these sort of tracks where you need the rear, it costs us a lot of race time. So a lot of work to do. We need to put our heads down, get the homework done, and it's only race one, so we still have margin of improvement.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So that was Ferrari, but there is, of course, another team in the mix in the top 4, and that is Mercedes. Did I say that was Mercedes? I mean, that was Ferrari. This is Mercedes. We're going to talk about them now. Been a long winter. Coming into the race, Toto Wolff, Lewis Hamilton, all massively pessimistic about the car, about the design philosophy. Do we need to chuck it in the bin, start again, massive upgrade packages? But for this race, they were there. They were right there with you guys for the vast majority of it, with Ferrari for the majority of it as well. Are things as bad at Mercedes as we might have thought yesterday and the day before?
No, especially if you look at them in the first day of testing or second day of testing, you can see they really improved. And yeah, I think like last year, they started really bad, but they are able to make these steps forward. So I think if they start like this, they can make good steps forward during the season. But yeah, I think they were around some very fast green cars today. So yeah, they couldn't really show their full potential, I would say. But I think on hards, they were really good. They were matching pretty much Ferrari's pace. And yeah, I think from now on, they're going to only start to grow as well.
Some good battles between your team and the Mercedes today, with George, with Lance, obviously with Fernando and with Lewis all the way through. What was the feeling like down at the team in terms of Mercedes' pace during the race? Was it a major concern, or did you always feel as though you could get them?
No, I think we always managed to be a bit quicker, especially because every pit stop we were making was a bit later. So every time we caught up to them, we had probably 2 or 3 laps tire advantage. So that was interesting and also really good to have that tire advantage to be able to overtake them. Otherwise, would be quite difficult, I would say, because they had really good straight line speed, and that was something, I think, the only thing that Aston is missing now.
Really, is the straight line speeds?
I think that's the only thing that, if you run more downforce, for sure you're going to have less straight line speed. And I think it was a bit difficult to get past. Obviously, it was easy to stay close. But, compared to them, it was difficult to run the DRS and get past quite early on the straights. Is
the car inherently draggy, or is it just maximizing the power unit?
No, I think last year the car was very draggy. I think that was the main problem from last year. And this year, Aston, they managed to get a good car, very good downforce. And if you get that benefit on downforce, compromising a little bit straight line speed is always worth it.
You've got crazy traction, though. Crazy traction. Lewis Hamilton sounded miserable on Friday, as low as I've heard him on Saturday. Let's hear how he sounds after the Grand Prix on Sunday.
Hey Lewis, some great battles out there, but I appreciate you just didn't have the car to deliver what you wanted to do. How tough was it for you?
It was a fun race today. Just wasn't fast enough. I loved the race. I loved racing, so I'm happy that it was kind of smooth sailing. I had a great start. Got Fernando in turn 4, and I was like, geez, this is a great start to a race. Felt like one of my better opening laps. But then I just was sliding around. I couldn't turn. I had so much understeer at the beginning. It took so much wing out. I couldn't get around some of the corners, and I just couldn't keep up with the guys ahead. But my mid stint was good, and then at the end, just so close to catching Carlos, but not good enough.
I mean, you had a great battle with Fernando when you kind of went backwards and forwards. That, like you said, that must have been fun. And then chasing Carlos must give you hope that at least you can fight those guys going forward.
We definitely can't fight them at the moment. They were much quicker than us today, as were the Astons. So we're the 4th fastest team now, as opposed to the 3rd last year. And yeah, we're going backwards. We really have a lot of work to do to try and close that gap.
Thank you.
We have been joined by the man that I predicted would get a podium on Thursday, and I stuck with that prediction all the way through the weekend. It wasn't quite a podium, but he made up the most places in the race, showed that Alpine has got phenomenal race pace. Pierre, I think if it wasn't for Fernando's heroics today, you would have got driver of the day. What a drive. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. I knew that starting from, Bahrain city center, it will be quite an eventful race, and now I had to stay calm. I knew we had some car pace yesterday, didn't come together, and I had to make it up for it today. So I was so mad yesterday night, all the morning. I was just focused, and I had these points in target, and the team did a great strategy. Car pace was good. And it was important for the first race with Alpine to get these points.
And it wasn't an easy race. It wasn't like you were sort of out in clean air and could just push and feel the car. You had to fight, you had to scrap, you had to battle your way through. How does the car feel in the fight?
I definitely had to be quite smart, because sometimes I was just stuck in a DRS train. Some other times I really had to push hard in out laps. When I could use the car pace, I had to go for it. Made a couple of definitely important moves in the race. But no, I'm happy because I could feel and I could see that there is potential in that car. Came close to Valtteri in the end, but we know that if we fix what didn't really go well, we're clearly there for the points on Sunday. So we'll go for it in the coming races.
That's it. What have you got to do to dial it in quali, or is it still a mystery what happened yesterday?
I mean, that's 2 laps, and that's probably the only 2 laps that didn't come together since I did the first test in the car. So what a shame, but it just shows in that midfield, if you don't get everything right, it's so close, you pay the price straight away. But it was a one-off. We recovered from that. We'll fix that and make sure we start in the right position next time.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Thank
and
you.
I am sure
steal a water.
Yes, steal a water, please. Have you not had one yet? Sorry, we don't have anything fun on the show. We've got no ice lollies this week. I'm sure everyone that's got Pierre in their fantasy F1 team will be sitting there absolutely delighted right now, because of course you get your points for all the positions made up. So there's a good, what are we looking at, 11, 12 points there or more. I'm not entirely sure how the scoring works, but definitely somebody to have today in the team. Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous, Pierre Gasly's day went really, really well, but poor old Esteban Ocon had a nightmare. Everything that could go wrong seemingly did go wrong. It was all looking so great at lights out. By the end of the day, other than Charles Leclerc, I think you'd probably be hard-pressed to find a more disappointed driver with his afternoon. Sam Collins back at base. I know you're going to take us through what was, frankly, just a really bizarre afternoon.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Actually, the afternoon started to go a bit wrong for Esteban Ocon before the lights went out, and we can see that just here. The first appointment he had with race control was his car being incorrectly positioned on the starting grid. Now, from the onboard camera, you get a sort of sense of what the driver can see, and there's not very much you can see. Now, either side of the starting grid, you'll have these hatchings that sort of run across the front of the car like this, and the driver has to sit with their front wheels fully inside of it. You can see it here very neatly on the front of the Aston Martin. The car is fully inside its grid box, but from this onboard footage, it looks absolutely fine for the Alpine. Whereas actually, if you take another look at the starting grid, you can see what I'm talking about here. It's very subtle, but the FIA did pick up on this, and they have been hot on this before. Now, have a look at Esteban Ocon's car here. You can see just in front, you can see the little dots where you can see the ends of the grid hatching of each car, and you can see quite clearly Esteban Ocon's front tyre just sitting over that line, which is not where it should be. So you can see very clearly Ocon's front wing sticking out, and you can see sticking out. Now, last year, there was an incident at the Brazilian Grand Prix where Lewis Hamilton, and I think it may have been Esteban Ocon as well, was sitting out of their grid hatchings, and that wasn't penalised. Well, the reason I understand that wasn't penalised last year was because the grid hatchings at Interlagos were painted ever so slightly too small, so those drivers got away with it. But here, the grid hatchings are painted absolutely perfectly. Well, the race got underway, and Esteban Ocon picked up a 5-second penalty for being out of position at the start. But during that time, he took a bit of a biff from another car behind. I think it was the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, who did a bit of damage to the back end of the Alpine. Well, coming into the pits, there was some front wing damage on the Alpine as well. Coming to the pits to serve his mandatory penalty, the 5-second penalty. Now, the rules here are very, very strict. You come into the pits to serve any sort of penalty, time penalty. Your mechanics are not allowed to perform any work on the car whatsoever for 5 seconds with the car stationary. Any work that happened before that point, you're going to get another penalty. And that's exactly what seems to have happened here. Now, it happened very quickly at that moment. Just a couple of seconds, you saw the mechanics dive in, but you can see them dive in, but they hover around the car. Now, if you have a look around this corner, where you've got the mechanics getting their front wing adjustment tools out to change that nose structure on the front of the Alpine. Now, what happens is the mechanics are aware of this rule. So they just sort of hold back for a moment and don't get going on the car. And you can see them waiting, and then suddenly they get going. That's when they thought the 5-second penalty was served. However, the FIA, with some more detailed cameras, have studied this, and apparently one of the Alpine mechanics came into contact with the car with his tool 0.4 seconds too early, 0.4 of a second, and that resulted in another penalty being issued to Esteban Ocon. So he then got a 10-second penalty in place of the 5-second penalty because they didn't serve the 5-second penalty properly. The trouble didn't end there. Now, Esteban Ocon had to come back to the pits for another stop later on, and he got busted for pit lane speeding, and he was 0.1 kph over the pit lane speed limit. That resulted in another 5-second penalty, so Alpine eventually decided to serve both the 10-second penalty for not serving the 5-second penalty and the additional 5-second penalty together for a 15-second pit stop penalty. At which point Alpine sort of did a few more laps, and I spoke to the team just after the race, and they sort of said, well, we retired the car essentially to save the power unit, save any more damage, and I think with a little bit of gallows humour, they said, and save there being any more penalties. Back to you, Will.
0.1. Nope. I mean, rules are rules, but 0.1, that's wild. Okay, right, that's Esteban Ocon's horrible day. Let's look at a team that had a good day today. Zhou Guanyu at Alfa Romeo, fastest lap of the race. Valtteri Bottas, points. And at one stage of the race, played a blinder, pulled the undercut, found himself solid midfield, having not qualified in the top 10. Great day for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, it was great. I was actually impressed to see him up there, and I don't even know why every team didn't do like a very early pit stop from those softs, because they were degrading so much, and I could see from the onboards the cars were like really slow, and I don't know, I think maybe they were scared of not getting the full race done into hard tires, but it is what it is. He pulled that undercut, I think it worked. He got some free air after that as well, so great job with him.
What's the feeling like about the midfield? Do we think, does Aston think it's going to be quite fluid? Sort of looking at Alpine, Alfa Romeo, the Williams and the AlphaTauri even after the evidence of this race, that we could see a lot of movement within that midfield throughout the year?
I think so. If you look in qualifying, I think from P1 to P16, yeah, it was really, really close. Probably 1 second, I'm not sure, but it was really close. And yeah, I think the field this year, everyone is really close together. I think having a year after the first year of these regulations, everyone can close the gaps to the top teams, and everyone is a lot closer. So the midfield is going to be really, really close together. And yeah, I think if you take the last team, probably is what we were considering AlphaTauri or Williams. They were very close up there. So there's no back team anymore. It's just midfield. Everyone can fight for it, so it's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, before we stop talking about those who've had a good day and move on to those who've had, should we say, a more challenging day, I don't think we've really spoken enough about your teammate Lance Stroll, who did have a really, really good day today. Considering the pain he must have been in, considering the damage to his wrist, how hard do you think it was for him to even get out there, having not done any testing in the car at all?
Yeah, it was impressive. I think, first of all, just to get here on Thursday, you could see he was in pain. Friday, he was in pain. Oops.
Oh dear.
Someone broke something.
It's not Esteban Ocon.
But
it might be the way his day's going.
But no, I think since Friday he's already been on it. He was struggling a little bit. He tried, to adapt even the car, change a few parts to make it steering lighter, throttle pedal lighter, everything a bit lighter just to be able to cope with it. And then Friday to Saturday he was a bit better, and then I think today he was feeling actually quite well because the results can prove it. So it was really nice to see him fighting up there.
So many questions over whether he could drive the car, so many questions in this paddock about whether he should be in the car in the state that he looked like he was in practice on Friday, having to push the steering wheel around. The 57 laps of the Grand Prix, P6, brilliant drive from Lance Stroll today. I think one person who's going to be very happy, not just Lance himself, but your team boss on the day that you get a podium in the opening race of the season. It's Mike Crack.
Mike, congratulations. What a day, what a weekend, what a start to the season for Aston Martin and indeed Fernando Alonso, his 99th podium, and Lance Stroll in P6. Can you put into words the monumental effort and progress this team has made?
Yeah, monumental effort from the team. Yeah, you will probably remember 12 months ago. We were here also. It was very, very tough start. We had Sebastian with COVID. We had very difficult first two races. We came last to Imola. But I think one of the great strengths of this year is the teamwork, is the way we work together, the way we talk to each other, the way we work every day, constructively. Whether it's the mechanics, whether it's the engineers, it doesn't really matter in our team. So I think it is this union that makes our strength, and I think this is also what has helped us to progress. But it will not be easy all the time like that, to be honest.
Aston Martin are celebrating at the moment. It could have been very different. Lap 1, turn 4, both your drivers made contact. Have you spoken to them about that?
No, I have not seen them yet. I have checked the videos a couple of times because I knew that they were going to ask me this question.
So predictable.
No, I think we must not forget Lance had George on his outside, so he raced George quite hardly, and he wanted to stay in front of him. And just at the braking point, Fernando cut from the inside. So it was really unfortunate. I would say it's what these things that are happening in lap 1, which you don't want to see as a team, but these things happen. So, but I think in this case here, it was really an incident that happens on lap 1. Yeah.
How much were you and the pit wall holding their breath on the battles Fernando had with George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton, and that overtake?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we had a tyre advantage because we stopped later. And these are choices that you have to make as a team, how you work on strategy. And again, there, I think our strategy team did really well, not getting carried away by people stopping earlier, but sticking to the plan, anticipating what's going to happen. And then we had the tyre advantage and the car and the driver to make the passes. I think it's much nicer for you if we pass on the track rather than in the pits.
Absolutely. And finally, Mike, before, during testing before this season, we'd all put you around P4, P3 in the pecking order. It seemed you were the second fastest car out there tonight. Would you agree?
Yeah, maybe today. But we need to keep a feet on the ground. There will be new karts in Jeddah, completely different track. And we must also not forget who we are up with here. Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, they're really strong teams that we respect a lot. And, it can well be that in 2 weeks' time we are maybe 4th or 5th or 6th. We have to see.
For now, enjoy this moment.
Thanks
so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great to hear from Mike Crack. Now, look who's joined us. It's Mr. Jolyon Palmer. Jolyon, great commentary today. Really fun race to listen to, mate. So, well done.
Thank you.
It's not such a well done, though, for Haas or McLaren. Difficult days for both those teams.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was a nice race, wasn't it? So it was an enjoyable one to cool, but not for those guys. I mean, Haas, Nico Hülkenberg starting in the top 10 was a bit of a hero yesterday to get all the way through. One lap pace was good, but he was a bit scared of the race, wasn't he? Because of the long run pace. He had the front wing damage. When he hit the back of Ocon at the start, and that was the front wing damage then, which made it even slower, and then he did the pit stop. And K-Mag started low, didn't have the armoury to move forward. And McLaren, well, it's what we thought from testing. They're struggling. Lando got in the top 10 at the start and didn't have the pace, was dropping back. then had just a repeated reliability issue, and it was a testing session for them.
I think this is why so many people had McLaren so far down the order. I know it upset a lot of McLaren fans that everyone's prediction was that McLaren were going to be 8th, 9th, 10th. It wasn't over their general pace. It was the reliability and the fragility of their cars. And it's been proved today. Lando lucky to make the flag, and Oscar obviously not making the flag.
Pace wasn't good, though. The pace was really poor from McLaren. Lando, I thought, was brilliant to get as close as he did to Q3 yesterday. He only got through into Q2 because of he was the first driver out of him and Sargent to do the lap. He could have been both McLarens out in Q1. And then he gets in the top 10. He's overtaken by Albon. He's then got Sargent on debut in the Williams, hustling him. I mean, this is a guy who's not won a race, but he's had a pole. He's been fighting for podiums. He got one last year. He shouldn't be fighting at the back. So I feel a bit sad for Lando with the state that McLaren are in. And obviously for Oscar Piastri, he needed some laps, needs to get some data for himself and the team, and reliability wasn't good for him. So McLaren are in trouble. I think they're looking forward to like Baku when they can bring an upgrade package and find some pace.
Disappointing day as well for Charles Leclerc. We heard from him earlier. Now we can hear from his team boss, Fred Vasseur, who's with Laura Winter.
Fred Vasseur, I'm sorry today hasn't been what you'd hoped for, what we perhaps expected from Ferrari. What happened to Charles Leclerc's car?
We had an issue on the engine, and we have to investigate exactly to understand what's happened. It's not the engine itself, but it's an accessory. I would say that it's a shame because but it's the real picture of the situation, that it is like it is. I think on the one pace lap that we were able to match Red Bull, but it was not the case in the long stint that Charles would have probably do P3, but no if, and that we are not able to finish the race. And picture is also that on the reliability we have to make a huge improvement, that we have to consider the race today as the real picture, and to start from there and to do the best to improve and to change the situation.
Fernando Alonso just pipped Carlos Sainz right at the end there as well. Carlos Sainz saying if he pushes too hard he won't finish this race thanks to the tyre degradation. Was it worse than you anticipated, or
No, I think
expected?
that everybody anticipated the second stop, and it was quite harsh to go to the end, that everybody was in the same situation, and the tyre deg was I think for Carlos was a bit less than for Lewis at the end of the race, and Alonso was probably a bit faster than Carlos on the last couple of laps. But again, that I'm not focused on this. I want to have a look on the global picture, that we have to make a huge improvement in terms of reliability in general, and it's not just about the race, and to improve the race pace.
In testing, I asked you where you thought Ferrari would be in the pecking order. We joked and you didn't answer me. I'm not joking now, obviously, after today. Where do you think Ferrari sit, and is it below Aston Martin?
Again, that we don't have to race with if, and that because this makes no sense, but Charles would have been finished P3, would have been a good reward for the team, but it is like it is, and it's not a matter for me to know exactly where we are. I think on the one lap pace that we are there, and we have to fix the issue on the consistency, and the most important is the reliability for me.
Thanks so much, Fred. Better luck
Thank
next
you.
time. Thank you.
Wow, that's Fred Vasseur. The big question for them, obviously the pace of Aston Martin, but the big question for everybody, the pace of Red Bull. Start with you, Felipe. They looked pretty good today, didn't they?
Yeah, I think couldn't look better. But since the beginning, they run 2 soft tires. So yeah, I think just that can show us how much less tech they could have against the others. And then also on the hard tire, they're managing, and still the pace was amazing. So yeah, the car was mega. Both drivers doing an amazing job.
It was evident, wasn't it, from practice when they ran that hard, and we thought, why are you running that hard now? You've used it up. You've only got one set for the race. It left them open. They were never going to run the mediums. That strategy was pinned in from practice on Friday.
They could do what they like and they'd win this race. They could run the mediums. It doesn't matter. They've got the pace advantage. I wonder as well how hard they were pushing. What do you reckon? How hard are the 2 drivers? How hard is Max pushing once he's got a 10-second
do that, Jolien.
cushion?
Give us hope. Give us hope. Don't
Not
kill
hard.
the hope.
Especially from mid-race onwards, not hard, I think.
I think he's nursing the soft tyres a little bit, and he's managing the gap to Checo. Red Bull are 1-2. They're bringing the car home. And we've seen sometimes in Formula One history, one team gets the rules right and they just launch out of the blocks and they're away, and that's Red Bull. Now, the question is, 23 races, 22 more to go. How quickly can Aston Martin or Mercedes or Ferrari catch? Aston Martin are on the similar concept, at least. Mercedes and Ferrari got to be questioning where they can go with their concepts, given the difference here. The other question, though, is, was it a bit of a Bahrain special? We've done testing in Bahrain, we've done a race in Bahrain. It's kind of an average circuit. It's high deg, so that will favour Aston today and Red Bull. But in terms of the corner layouts, it's quite a traction-ease, long straights. We're getting more and more of those sort of circuits on. But street circuits coming up, high downforce circuits, there's no real fast corners here. Are we going to find some Red Bull weaknesses as we go?
We need to talk about Sergio Perez. Of course, a great race from him today, on the podium, made the same strategy work, fought through. He said at the start of the weekend, he's not here to be Max's number 2, he's here to take the wins from him. Have we seen any evidence over the course of this weekend that Checo can take that fight to Max as he so wants to do?
On paper, he had a good weekend. 10th and a half down in qualifying. That's good to start the season for Checo. It was pretty close, and actually the run to the line, I think through 2 sectors, there was nothing in it. And in the race, if you look at the pure stats, his race was better, really, apart from getting a bad start. Once he passed Charles, I think he maybe even made a little bit of time into Max. That's the raw stats. But what we don't know is how much Max was coasting at that point. Did he have another half a second a lap or a few tenths a lap that he could put into it if he was under pressure? Checo had to fight for half the race. Max never did. He was just gone out front. So how hard does he push himself at that point?
One person who will know is Christian Horner, who I'm sure is delighted not just to have a 1-2, but that he gets to speak to Laura Winter, who is somewhere in the paddock, having caught up with him.
Christian, congratulations. What a day for Red Bull. Once again, P1 and P2 are 1-2 in the first race of the season. Just sum it up for us. You can hear the cheers from your garage from here.
Look, a fantastic performance for us. To get that 1-2 finish, to get 43 points on the board after the disappointment of last year, to get that result in the bag at the first race of the year it's always important. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But great team performance today.
It was brilliant. Max coming over the radio, though, with a few issues throughout, the weekend. He's saying the car doesn't feel quite like it did in testing. Why is that? What's changed for him?
Well, I think that's the thing about Grand Prix racing. Every day is a different day, and there's never guarantees. I think the car in the race was very strong. We biased the race toward, set up towards race performance, and you can see the cars have been very easy on their tyres today, and we ran a compound softer than the others, so but in that middle stint, so that phenomenal performance from the whole team in Milton Keynes, all the people, the guys and girls behind the scenes that work so hard to achieve this kind of performance.
I was going to ask, it was a bold strategy. We were expecting the soft hard, and you went soft.
Yeah, I think that, the drivers and the degradation was good. The drivers were happy on them, and I think that it made sense to stick on it. Why change a good thing? So we didn't need to copy what everybody else was doing.
No, you didn't. A word on Checo as well. Sergio Perez, P2, backing up the performance from Max, keeping the Ferraris and indeed the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso at bay.
Yeah, look, I mean, Checo was unfortunate on the dirty side of the grid. He lost out to a fast-starting Charles on the soft tyre. But then he kept fighting back, and we gave him the better tyre to fight Charles with, and he made the move, and then it was a matter of really managing the tyre for the rest of the race.
A fast-starting Charles Leclerc, but not one who managed to finish the race. Just a word on that Ferrari reliability. You were in that position with 2 DNFs last year. Ferrari have 1 DNF now. Yeah, but that's, when you're pushing the boundaries, it can happen. So, you're never that far away from a DNF, and there's always things that you've got to manage during a race. So, unfortunate for them and Charles, but it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and I'm sure they'll be fighting back hard. Well, you're out in front at the moment in that marathon. Thanks very much, Christian.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Max Verstappen, guys, 36th Grand Prix victory today. Looked serene, the 2-time Formula One world champion. But the curse of the opening race dictates that no one in the last 7 years who's won the opening Grand Prix has gone on to win the championship. Is that the only hope the other 19 drivers have got?
They'll be clinging to it, that's for sure. I think we'll all be clinging to it in terms of racing action right now because of the way that Red Bull are ahead. But as I said before, I mean, the development can make a big difference. Red Bull have the least amount of development time. They got it even a smaller amount than they should have done because of the cost cap breach. And last year, Ferrari were 1-2 here. It wasn't quite as walk in the park as it was today. But by the end of the year, they were quite a long way behind Red Bull. So that shows the level of development that goes into the cars. And Ferrari and Mercedes, and Aston Martin, sorry, can all, I'm not used to Aston Martin being up there so much. They can all find a little bit, and if Red Bull is standing still, they can be caught. Question is, what damage can they do now?
Yeah, totally. Max has looked imperious this weekend, and all of that in a car which, as Laura was talking to Christian about, he's not entirely happy with, not as happy as he was in testing.
Yeah, I think a few things switched up from testing. From our team's perspective, I think we could see we were closer than what we expected. And Red Bull, I think they were not as fast as we expected in quali. But you know, I think after that in racing, they show how fast they are. But as Julian said before, I think we need to see if all this we've seen now is just a Bahrain special, or with the platforms the team have, they're going to keep developing and if something's going to change during the season.
The questions keep on coming, but Max Verstappen answered the first one emphatically. Victory in the opening race of the season.
Hey Max, congratulations. Considering that you weren't too happy with the car at testing, did it feel a lot better today in the race, even with those issues you were having with the downshift?
Yeah, I think overall, yeah, it was quite good. I mean, I think for me the first stint was the most important, where I could pull a gap. Once we had the gap, it was just about making sure that we could do our stint plan, and that worked out well. I think also the car was working on every compound we put on the car, so it looked a bit, of course, lonely out there, but there's still, of course, a lot of things to look at and fine-tune, but overall, of course, very happy to win here.
And overall, a great team performance as well. Really great to have Checo there too. Red Bull looking very strong at the minute, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what we were dreaming of and what we wanted to achieve. So yeah, great day for the whole team.
Congrats.
Well, that is pretty much it for the post-race show. Just a reminder to get your fantasy F1 teams in for Jeddah. Julian, how did your fantasy F1 team do today?
Knocked it out of the park.
You did knock it out of the park, didn't you?
I called the podium on weekend warm-up.
You did. Ah, you've just had a blinder, haven't you? Who's in your team? You somehow managed to get Max and Checo and Fernando.
Yep.
Are you over the budget, Cap?
Pierre,
have you done
20th to 9th. I think you get points for that. I had Nico Hülkenberg. Great day yesterday. I don't know how the points even work, but maybe he's dropped a few today.
Right, there you go. Have you done an F1 fantasy team yet?
No.
Well, there you go, Felipe. You know what you've got to do tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And congratulations. Please pass on a congratulations to everybody at the team. Jolyon, thanks so much for being here. Our thanks to our guests. Our thanks to Laura Winter. And our thanks to you for tuning in. And we get to do this all again in a couple of weeks' time in Jeddah, a track that man there knows only too well. Please join us in Saudi Arabia for round 2 of this 2023 Formula 1 World Championship for practice 1 at 4:30 local time, practice 2 at night, 8 p.m. Then practice 3, 4:30 again on Saturday, the 18th of March. Qualifying coming your way at 8 p.m. The race at 8 p.m. Formula 1 STC Saudi Arabian Grand Prix on Sunday, the 19th of March. Rosanna and Sam Collins will be in Saudi Arabia. Be sure to join them. But for now, from all of us here this weekend, including our fantastic commentary team and newcomers, new boys to the F1 TV family, Alex Jakes and David Coulthard, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. What a great opening weekend it's been. Max Verstappen, the winner. Fernando Alonso and Aston Martin, the story. We'll see you in Saudi Arabia.
That was good.